Well, good morning, folks, on a very rainy, windy, horrible day here in the UK. If you watch my previous videos, or video yesterday, you will know that I got my frame and various bits back for the Yamaha Diversion from Andy at Rhino Coatings in Scunthorpe. And as I said in the previous video, cracking job. Really, really good. You'll have to forgive me if I sound a bit croaky. I've just come back from Marrakesh, and of course, 3.5 hours on an aeroplane with 299 other people, and you're breathing it all in, aren't you? So, plus, as you'll see later on in this video, I had intended just picking the frame up and putting it in the garage and leaving it, and it didn't quite transpire like that. You'll see anyway. So there's the frame, fairing frame on the top right there, centre stand, a few brackets and things. It's cracking finish, really, really good. Lovely and thick, that's what you want on a frame, isn't it? And, Andy blocked off all the holes with little silicone heat-proof plugs and no issues whatsoever. So what I've done is on the bike, I've upgraded the steering head bearings, because the ones that are on the bike are the originals, beyond a shadow of a doubt they're original, and they're a very primitive kind of ball bearing in a sort of angled plastic cage. Tech has moved on a bit in the last 30 years, I think. So there's the standard ones. So you had a bearing race at the bottom, another bearing race at the top, and then you've got these like the angled plastic cage, and of course, when you take them out, all the ball bearings pop out. But now, for inexpensive, you can buy caged needle roller bearings, which are a definite upgrade. So much easier to fit, and just generally better. So there's a picture of the actual tapered roller bearings there. The bigger one is at the bottom. The left-hand side one is at the bottom, because that's taking most of the weight. Well, in fact, it's taking all of the weight, really. And the top one, the right-hand side one, is for the top. So I thought, well, while I was waiting for to get the frame and bits back, I thought I'll put the bearing onto the steering head thing there. So what I did was I gently heated that. It has a built-in rubber seal, which is an improvement on the originals, and warmed it up a bit, and it went on pretty easily. So having got the frame back, then of course that's the time to be putting in the bearing racers. So I put the top and bottom racers into my freezer, and I left them in there, put them in there about a week ago actually, and so they shrink, slightly when they're freezing cold. Put a very thin smear of grease around the outside, and I'd saved the old bearing racers to tap them in. So they went in pretty easily, really. It just takes a bit of whacking, careful whacking, and that's the top one. Obviously, I give it all a good clean before putting the new bearings in. So that was the ideal time to do it. Also reattach the VIN plate onto the bike, because that was taken off for powder coating. Oops, I've got a repeat picture there. Sorry about that. So there it is. I mean, you can see that's the main supporting bearing, and I like the fact it's got the built-in rubber seal, because the original ball bearing types, it's all bits, rubber everywhere, and right pain. These are so good, and for 18 quid, pretty good, really. So the next stage then was I'd already practiced putting the old frame onto the engine, so I'll put the engine on its side and then lowered the frame onto the engine, and it needed to be sort of twisted and gyrated a bit in order to get it on. So I practiced with the old one, because it doesn't matter if it touched the engine and scratched the paint or whatever. So I've established how to actually, with the engine on its side on the Onceler trolley there, I was able to know exactly what motion was needed not to foul on anything. Having said that, I still protected all of the danger areas with cardboard, as you can see, and that's well worth doing. And then it was just a case of, lowering it onto the engine, as you can see from that picture there. Now I've had to take the sump off the bike. I remove the inlet manifolds as well. It just gives that extra clearance, and having got it powder coated and looking fantastic, it's a crying shame if you start jiggling it around an engine and chipping the stuff off. So I did that, and then having got that onto that's after the cardboard's off, obviously. This is it with the cardboard on. You can see the new steering head race there. So, and I put cardboard in to protect the engine and the frame from the engine, etc. Now, having got it in, I've managed to get that fiendish rear engine bolt in. I got a new or a replacement bolt, and the only place I could find one was Lithuania, and I bought that on eBay. So I got the bolt in, and then because you've then got a bike frame, it's quite easy to lever the bike in, or the frame and the engine, rather than just trying to rotate the engine. So you've got a lever there to be able to reorientate it for various reasons. So much easier, actually, to do. So having got the rear engine bolt in, and having protected the cradle of the frame at the front, it was then pretty easy to get the front engine mount in, and then I did the other one. So this is a rear view here. Now, if you watch my previous videos, you'll know that spacer tube between those engine lugs originally was a ferrous metal one, and I thought it was to stop compression when you tighten the engine bolt. In fact, it isn't, because when you think about it, the bolt goes all the way through the frame. It isn't to stop compression at all. So I've used a piece of copper pipe packed with grease. As you can see there, I did in fact order stainless steel tube, which was allegedly 12mm internal diameter. It turned up and the bolt wouldn't go through it. So anyway, I've used copper, which is fine. It's not going to rust onto it. Larded it with grease. Now, if you look at that centre stand, it's not but I was told it years ago, putting pennies in is absolutely amazing. You don't need a spring puller. You don't need to muck about straining yourself and, being a world-class bodybuilder just to get your centre stand on. Put pennies in. Anyway. So the swinging arm was next. So I'd taken off the chain guide in order to get it powder coated. As I said in my previous videos, new cage needle roller bearings in it. So I put the chain guard back on there. If you see any marks on the powder coating, like what look like scuffed areas or whatever, they're not. It's my greasy hands, because I've been putting grease on various bolt threads and so on. The powder coating is absolutely perfect. It's just, as I say, it looks all manky there because of my thumbprints. So the next stage was to put having got the centre stand on, was then to put the swinging arm on. You have to be careful, obviously, because when you're holding what is effectively a heavy swinging arm and waggling it about to get it in there, you don't want to be bashing the frame, you see. So I took great care on that. So there's a sort of rear view of it. Swinging arm facing us there, look, and then you can see I've taken the pennies out the spring now. The technique with that is you put your centre stand down or your side stand down, and then just put pennies in. They all fit perfectly, and then you just pull it back up again and your spring comes off. It's so simple. You do not need pullers and spring pullers. I then put the monoshock back on. Now that is, I would say, the original monoshock. However, it is in reasonable cosmetic condition. It certainly works properly. It was on the lowest setting for the spring, so I've put it at the middle now because there was evidence of the tyre touching the inner mudguard. So I've put it much, a lot stronger. So there it is again with the you can buy YSS ones at more than I paid for the bike, which I'm not going to do. I don't know. One day I might buy one that's cosmetically better, but you can't see it. So, and it functions. That's the main thing. So there it is now, with the engine in the frame, and then gradually, as I got the mounts in, the engine mounts, I removed the cardboard when it was safe to do so. But I can't stress enough, you really do, if you're going to do this, change your tyres, do not, put your engine back in your frame without protecting it. The next stage was to put the steering head and the forks on. Now that picture shows with the wheel on, but in actual fact what I did was to remove the wheel from the forks, get the steering head all put together, tightened up a bit, and then I put the front wheel on, which resulted in it being like that. So this particular bike, I think like most bikes, when it's on the centre stand, the rear wheel is off the ground, so the weight is on the centre stand and the front wheel. So it was dead easy just to pull the centre stand down, move the Onceler trolley with it all on across the garage, and then just lift it up sideways. The centre stand, taking great care that the centre stand didn't, collapse, sort of thing. And the spring's on it now, but I then just lifted it up, and it ended up like that, which it's beginning to look a little bit like a motorcycle instead of a great big pile of parts. So there it is, and as you can see my little trolley in the background there, that's the Onceler trolley. It's really useful. I must have done 4 or 5 bikes up putting the engines on that. It really is good. So the bike ended up looking like this. So newly powder coated front wheel, obviously, and this is the nice bit, really. I mean, this is the bit where there's still challenges putting a bike back together, but there's a lot fewer challenges than when you're stripping it, when you've got seized bolts and rounded off bolts, and that damned engine bolt, ended up with an entire frame being wrecked because of one bolt. However, the rebuild, there it is, another powder coated wheel at the back, got the caliper on, torsion bar, caliper carrier. At this stage I haven't got the axle nut tightened up. So again, you've got to be careful when putting bits back together, because if you start banging a metal piece, component against the swinging arm, it can chip, actually. So just proceed with caution, really. Then I got the engine, sort of the footrest plates back on, and then what I did was to bleed the rear brake, which has 2 bleed nipples. So I thought that's the ideal time to do it. And the front brake, as I detailed in previous video about the Interceptor and the GT, and also my Honda as well, actually, you don't need to bleed the front brake. You basically take the lid off the reservoir and just keep squeezing, gently squeezing and tapping the lever, and all the bubbles come up the top. So I did that. Now I took this photo, but as a very critical Mr. Messenger said, and he confirms exactly what I think, whilst that is a perfectly good chain, it kind of lets it down a bit, I think. I think it needs a gold chain. I thought that, and then a certain Mr. Messenger messaged me and said, it needs a gold chain. I think he's right. What do you think? Does it need a gold chain? The one that's on it is a good chain, but... So there it is. That's with the caliper on. Engine mounts on. I then put the handlebars back on it. And then I went around it and put all the little rubber grommets and things, which I'd bagged up with my Sharpie pen. I'd written what they were, which is when you rebuild, if you've had all your bits in plastic Ziploc bags and you've got a Sharpie pen, indelible marker, and you write, seat supports or bolts from whatever, it is so easy to put back together because you've got everything bagged up. There's nothing worse than seeing, a failed rebuild on eBay and somebody says, I didn't complete it, all parts complete, and then it's in 4 plastic loaf crates, from the supermarket in about 1 million random pieces. So you're far better off You know, even that grommet there, which is for the side panel to locate onto, was in two of those were in a bag. You know, side stand, because you forget. You know, by the time you've had the thing into a trillion pieces, you forget, unless you're, you know, a genius. So that's it with that plate in the middle is for the seat lock, and then the rubber sort of doorstop things, seat supports. So that's the stage we're at the moment, and I'd be interested to know what you think. Does it need a gold chain, everybody? I think I know the answer, but tell me, what would you do? Yeah, I think I know what I think I might have to do, but it's such a shame because it's a really good chain. I don't know. You tell me. That's how the bike did look. It's going to look drastically different from that very soon, but at the moment, it looks like this. So, onwards and upwards. I was working on the bike from 3 o'clock yesterday afternoon until just after midnight, so that's 9 hours, which is good. I don't mind doing it, you know. I've got a decent, reasonably warm, well-lit garage, you know. Listen to podcasts and things while I'm faffing about. So let me know what you think, and I'll be posting updates as we get along. So much, well, one, never change your tyres, because that's where it all started, and two, never go into your garage thinking, I'll just put the frame in there and leave it for today. Not possible. In the meantime, take care on your bikes, watch out for the loonies, and I will post again soon. Bye for now.